Hey, how you doing? Davidinark here. Today I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to, I don't know, I was sitting around thinking, for whatever reason, about different PC golf games. Why some things pop in our heads, who knows, right? But anyhow, I got to thinking back, and I was like, if I remember correctly, one of the original golf games for the PC was a game called Lynx. Now, a lot of folks, especially if you're into retro gaming, you probably are familiar with Lynx 386. It's kind of considered the granddaddy of modern golf games, which is funny considering it was, put out in 1990 something, the very early 90s. But I think it's probably about 94, I think. But anyhow, before that, golf games did the best they could with whatever graphics were available. Most folks, when they think of very early golf games, either think like, Atari 2600, which, it was what it was. I mean, it had to work with the Atari 2600. So there you go. Or, perhaps leaderboard golf for the Commodore 64, which was hugely popular and just one of my favorite Commodore 64 games ever. But then there were other golf games that, kind of came along. And of course, IBM PC compatible graphics kind of went through, CGA, which is this 4-color awfulness. And then they had EGA, which was extended. And it had 16 colors, which was okay. I mean, you could tell it wasn't awesome, but it wasn't bad. But when Access came along with Lynx, the challenge of golf, it changed everything. And I don't mean to sound dramatic, but it really did. It was if I remember correctly, it was one of the first games that actually required you to have a VGA card, and in those days, that's a big ask. You're talking about 1989, 1990. I don't think the game itself came out officially until 91, although I am pretty sure we were able to play an early release copy maybe or something. Maybe we got a promo copy. I used to work for a computer retail company. It's long out of business, back in 89, hedging into 1990. And there were three of us guys who worked in the store. And of course, we were, big computer nerds and loved everything, gaming and whatever else. But in those days, we got different magazines that would come through and showcase kind of the newest, latest, greatest. And Lynx was, I mean, it blew us away. Again, before that, things were kind of limited to 16 colors and these kind of cartoony graphics. And then here was Lynx with 256 colors, which is nothing by today's standards. I get that. But in those days, 256 colors was considered photorealistic. And for all intents and purposes, it was to us. It was a brand new thing. And here was this golf game that looked like you were watching, it looked like you were playing TV. It was amazing for its time. One of the issues, though, again, it required VGA graphics. Now you could play it on an 8088 processor, which is the very first IBM PCs out there, the XT. You could also play it on 286 computers, which 286s at that time were kind of the mainstream, just sort of starting to fall out of favor with the newer, hotter 386s. And then, if I'm not mistaken, I think even when I was working at the store at that time, I think 486s were like the super high end, no one could afford, very, very few people, let me put it that way, could afford 486s at the time. And so here was this game that, basically it almost required at least a 286. Now, again, you could play it on something lower, but really it needed a 286 or above, had to have VGA graphics. In those days, most computers came with 512 or 640K of memory. Yeah, that's a K, not gigs. and not even megs, K, of RAM. If you were lucky, then you got a computer that had a meg of RAM, and that was like, bougie. And then it was not long after that, within probably not even a year or so, 2 and 4 meg versions of PCs in homes were starting to become the mainstream. In those days, though, 1 meg was anywhere from $40 to $50. So, I mean, it was very expensive to own, these quote unquote higher end machines. But anyway, all that to say that, not only did it have, this VGA graphics, it could take advantage of extended or expanded memory, anything above 640K. But Access did this really cool thing where they had a technology called RealSound. And although you could buy sound cards to go into your computers in those days, it was an expensive add-on, and RealSound was a way for these realistic sounds to come out of the PC speaker that was built into the computer, that prior to that had just been for beeps and boops and, pretty much either startup sounds or very one-note generic tunes, if you want to call them that. And RealSound changed that completely. So Lynx, not only did it, kind of set the bar in terms of the graphics being offered, but also the fact that you could do RealSound, and people didn't have to have an expensive add-on sound card in order to get decent sound even out of their computer speakers. Very, very cool. So what I have done here is I've actually taken a 286 in PCEM, and if you're not familiar with that, you can Google PCEM. It's a PC emulator. But I've got a 286-25 in the upper left corner. I've got a 386 SX25 in the upper right corner, and then I'm using DOSBox just the way it comes down at the bottom. Now, what's interesting is that for whatever crazy reason, the 286 RealSound, it played normal when I was recording it, but during playback, it sounds like absolute garbage. I have no idea what happened during recording or whatever, but it's completely muffled and just garbled, and I don't know what happened there. So you won't hear any of the 286 sounds, but the sounds you will hear, they are coming from the 386 and the DOSBox version. And a lot of what I wanted to do in here was just show you how, as you've seen, I'm sure by now, how the graphics get drawn in, literally drawn in. And that was one of the big complaints about the game, especially on these slower, lower end computers. You could, on some of these courses, on some of these holes, you could actually wait for like 2 minutes before that hole would get drawn in. Hey, yeah, that's great that it's, photorealistic for the time, but good gravy, I got to wait 2 minutes between holes. It took a lot of the oomph out of the game for sure. But as you can see here, even running on 286 and 386, not bad at all. Although I think weirdly, the PCEM 286 is actually drawing a hair faster than the 386. If not, they're very comparable. So I'm not quite sure what that's about. But anyhow, I just thought that'd be kind of fun to throw that in there. Some other things that you're going to see just in the different screens going on is just some of the different settings. You can do things like you could change the stance. So you could open your stance, close your stance. You could change the way the club head hit the ball. You could change where you dress the ball. Are you hitting the ball? Is the ball ahead of you when you hit? Are you coming from behind the ball to hit it? I mean, it's just amazing, especially for its time, all of the different features that you could have in this golf game. And of course, it was, local multiplayer. I don't believe it had online. I could be wrong about that. I don't think so, though. But you could do local multiplayer. So everybody, hanging out could take their turn and and play some golf. So you can, of course, create your own players. The game itself came with one course, Torrey Pines, but there were additional courses that you could purchase and get the discs for those and install the different add-ons into the game. But I don't know. It's very cool stuff, a lot of fun, and I was waxing some nostalgia and thought I'd share that with you. So feel free to share this with any of the folks that are old like me that remember this game, or if you have folks that are into retro gaming and just, want to take a trip down memory lane in terms of seeing what was cutting edge in terms of VGA graphics and course design and gameplay for golf games way back in 89, 90, right around that era. Share that with them. I appreciate it. Special thanks to Hero of God, GamerGull, and Mr. Spooky7 for supporting me on Patreon. You can check that out, patreon.com/davidinark. Thank you so much for watching. You got any questions, problems, suggestions, horror stories? Feel free to leave those down in the comment section below. I appreciate it as always. And we will see you next time. Have a great day.
That'll play.